Armin Melick was one of the richest businessmen in the city, but that evening he sat alone in his vast office, his face etched with fatigue. Behind him, the tall glass windows displayed the sprawling city, a sea of glowing lights, but Armin felt no joy. For years, he had relentlessly worked, day and night, to build his empire. People respected him, feared him, and followed his every command, but at this moment, none of it mattered. His heart was somewhere else, entirely with his only son, Rayhan. Armin clutched his phone, his knuckles white, as he watched a short video sent by someone from Rayhan's college. In the clip, Rayhan stood alone during a bustling school event. Students were chattering, laughing, and moving around in lively groups, but Rayhan remained isolated in a corner. His hands trembled slightly, his gaze fixed on the floor. He tried to approach a few classmates, mustering his courage, but each time, they either ignored him or simply walked away. One boy even turned to laugh behind his back. Armin watched the video over and over again. Every time he saw Rayhan's nervous expression, a sharp, physical pain shot through his chest. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "Rayhan, why does the world make things so hard for you?" You see, Rayhan was autistic. He was exceptionally smart, incredibly talented, and had a gentle soul, but he struggled with social interactions. He became anxious in noisy, crowded places, found it difficult to maintain eye contact, and needed extra time to process what others were saying. Sadly, most people didn't take the time to understand him. They just labeled him as strange, odd, or painfully shy. Armin had poured millions into business deals, hospitals, and high-profile charity events. He could move mountains with his wealth and influence, but he couldn't buy the one thing he truly wanted, his son's happiness. When Armin arrived home that night, he found Rayhan in his room. This space was a gallery of his son's emotions, filled with stunning paintings, serene skies, majestic mountains, flowing rivers, and lush trees. Rayhan used colors the way most people used words. Painting was his sanctuary, a world where he was free from judgment, a place where he never had to explain himself. Rayhan was so absorbed in his work that he didn't hear his father enter. He was focused on a painting of a breathtaking sunset, his brush dancing across the canvas. As he mixed vibrant shades of orange and purple, he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible, "I wish someone would talk to me." Without laughing, Armin froze at the door. Those simple, heartbreaking words pierced his soul. He turned away for a brief moment, quickly wiping a tear, before Rayhan could see it. His son never asked for money, expensive gifts, or luxury. All he ever wanted was a little kindness. A friend, someone who would see him as a person, not as a problem to be solved. Later that night, Armin sank into the sofa in the living room, his head buried in his hands. He felt a profound sense of helplessness. He could solve complex business crises in a matter of minutes, but he had no idea how to solve his own son's deep-seated loneliness. Then, slowly, an idea began to form in his mind, something he had never considered before. A blind date. He whispered into the quiet room. Not a romantic one, at least not initially. Armin's only hope was to find someone who would simply talk to Rayhan. Someone patient, someone gentle. Someone who understood that people like Rayhan weren't broken, they were just different. And different could be incredibly beautiful. The more he mulled it over, the more the idea felt right. He picked up his phone and dialed a trusted high-end matchmaking agency. When the agent answered, Armin's voice was firm and serious. "I am not looking for beauty or glamour. I need someone kind. Someone with a pure heart." The agency promised to send over a selection of profiles the very next morning. After ending the call, Armin stood silently in the dark room for a long time. He walked back to Rayhan's room and peered through the half-open door. Rayhan was now sitting on the floor, surrounded by his brushes and paints, humming a soft tune to himself. He looked peaceful, but also profoundly alone. Armin whispered, his voice filled with a father's fierce love, "I will find someone who sees your heart, my son, even if I have to search the entire world." And with that silent promise, the first chapter of Rayhan's unexpected journey toward love, acceptance, and courage quietly began that night. The next morning, Armin woke up long before the sun. He hadn't really slept, his mind racing with thoughts of Rayhan, his son. After a quick, tasteless breakfast, he locked himself in his home office, his eyes glued to his phone. He was waiting for the matchmaking agency to send the profiles they had promised. At exactly 10 o'clock, his phone buzzed, breaking the silence. 3 profiles. Just 3. Armin's heart hammered against his ribs as he opened the first one. The woman in the photo was undeniably stylish, oozing confidence from every pore. Her family was wealthy, and her career was in the high-stakes world of fashion. In every picture, she flashed a brilliant, perfect smile, but there was a sharpness in her eyes, an almost cold glint that made Armin uneasy. He shook his head, a silent no, and moved on. The second profile felt like a carbon copy of the first. Expensive clothes, flawless makeup, a lifestyle curated for social media. This woman loved the limelight, her feed a testament to a life lived for an audience. Armand let out a heavy sigh. He wasn't looking for someone who valued selfies over substance, who chased likes more than genuine connection. Then, he opened the third profile. Her name was Ayla. The first thing he noticed was the simplicity. No designer labels, no layers of makeup, just a soft, genuine smile and eyes that seemed to radiate kindness. There was a peaceful quality to her face, a warmth that reached through the screen and settled in his chest. As Armand read her bio, he felt his own racing heart begin to slow down. Ayla volunteered at a children's center where she read stories to kids with learning difficulties. She worked part-time while studying psychology. Her personal statement was short and simple. She believed in kindness more than appearance. The words patient, calm, and gentle were used to describe her. Armand leaned back in his chair, a whisper escaping his lips. This one. She's different. Without a second thought, he picked up the phone and called the agency. His voice was firm, resolute. "I choose Ayla," he said, leaving no room for discussion. The agent on the other end was agreeable, ready to set up the meeting. But then came the question that made Armand's blood run cold. "Should we tell her your son is autistic?" Armand froze. He thought about it, picturing the scenario. If they told her up front, would she see Rayan as a person or as a project? A responsibility? A charity case? He wanted someone whose kindness was innate, not a performance. "No," he said, his voice softer now. "Not yet. Let her meet him. As just him." With the plans finalized, Armand went to find Rayan. He found him in his favorite sanctuary, the quiet garden. Sitting under the sprawling branches of an old oak tree, a sketchbook resting on his lap. The garden was Rayan's escape, a world where the noise of everything else faded away. Armand approached slowly, carefully, not wanting to shatter the fragile peace. "Rayan," he said gently, sitting beside him. Rayan continued to sketch for a moment, his pencil scratching lightly against the paper. Before looking up, his expression shy. "Yes, Papa." Armand took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "There's someone who wants to meet you. A girl. She seems very nice, and I thought maybe, just maybe, you could try talking to her." The pencil in Rayan's hand stilled. His shoulders tensed, his body language screaming anxiety. "A girl?" he whispered, the words barely audible. Armand nodded, his expression gentle. "Only if you want to. There's no pressure at all." But Rayan's breathing was already quickening, his chest rising and falling in shallow pants. "What if she laughs at me? What if I say something wrong? People, they think I'm strange." Armand's heart ached. He placed a steadying hand on his son's shoulder. "Then we leave," he said firmly. "Instantly. You don't have to prove a single thing to anyone. My son, you only need to be yourself. If she is kind, she will understand you. And if she's not, then she's not for you." Rayan's gaze dropped back to his sketchbook, his sanctuary. "But I get scared around new people." "I know," Armand said, his voice a soothing balm. "And I'll be right there, close by. You won't be alone." A long, heavy silence stretched between them. Rayan seemed to be wrestling with a world of fears inside his own head. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. "Okay, I'll try." A genuine smile, the first one that morning, broke across Armand's face. "That's all I want, Rayan. That's all I could ever ask for." The meeting was arranged at a small, quiet cafe they both knew well. It was a place with soft lighting, comfortable chairs, and no loud music or bustling crowds, a peaceful haven where Rayan could feel safe. That evening, a message from the agency confirmed everything. Ayla has agreed. She will meet him tomorrow at 5 p.m. A strange cocktail of nervousness and hope swirled in Armand's stomach. He had no idea what this meeting would bring. It could be the start of something beautiful, a friendship, or it could end in disappointment. But he knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that this girl, Ayla, was their best chance. Later that night, Armand watched from the doorway as Rayan packed a small bag. Inside, he carefully placed the familiar objects that brought him comfort, a well-worn fidget cube, a small sketch of the garden, and his noise-canceling earphones, a tiny arsenal against a world that was often too loud, too bright, too much. Armand's eyes softened as he watched his son prepare for this monumental step. Tomorrow was a big day, a day that held the quiet, terrifying, and thrilling potential to change everything. The next day arrived far too quickly for Rayan. All morning, a persistent nervousness clung to him. His hands were cold and clammy, and he couldn't stop tapping his fingertips together, a nervous habit he'd had since childhood, a small, repetitive motion that surfaced whenever fear took hold. His father, Armand, sensed his anxiety and moved through their home like a gentle guardian. He spoke in soft tones, avoided any sudden, loud noises, and stayed close to Rayan, offering a silent, steady presence without any pressure. At 4:15 in the afternoon, Rayan stood before the mirror. He was dressed in a simple, light blue shirt, the fabric soft against his skin. Armand had carefully combed his hair, stepping in after watching Rayan anxiously fix the same section over and over. "You look good," Armand said, his smile gentle and reassuring. Rayan's gaze met his own reflection, but he didn't see what his father saw. "I don't feel good," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Armand placed a comforting hand on his son's shoulder, a warm, grounding touch. "You don't need to impress anyone," he said softly. "Just be yourself. The right person, the one who truly matters, will see your heart." By 4:40 p.m., they were on their way. The cafe was only a short, 15-minute drive from home. The late afternoon sky was painted with soft, golden light, and a gentle breeze whispered through the trees. It was a peaceful evening, the kind that feels perfect for a new beginning, a fresh start. But as they pulled up to the cafe, Rayan's steps faltered at the entrance. He stopped just outside the door, his anxiety returning in a rush. He turned to his father, his voice a strained whisper. "Papa, I'm scared." Armand met his gaze with understanding, his expression full of empathy. "I know," he nodded, "but I'm right here. I'll sit at the other end of the room, where you can see me anytime you need to." Taking a deep, shaky breath, Rayan pushed open the door and stepped inside. The atmosphere was exactly as Armand had requested when he'd called ahead. The cafe was quiet, bathed in the warm glow of soft lights, with slow, gentle music playing in the background. Rayan made his way to a small corner table near a window, a cozy, secluded spot. He sat down, his hands immediately going to the fidget cube in his pocket. He picked up the menu, staring at the words without actually reading them, his mind a whirlwind of nerves. At precisely 8 p.m., the cafe door chimed. The first girl entered. She was a burst of color, in bright clothes and heavy makeup. Her eyes scanned the room, landed on Rayhan, and she leaned over to whisper something to her friend, who stood beside her. Both of them let out a light laugh. Then, without so much as a glance in his direction, let alone a hello, the girl turned and walked towards a different table. Rayan's shoulders slumped. The familiar trembling returned to his fingers. He felt a sting of rejection, sharp and painful. Just 3 minutes later, at 5:03 p.m., the door opened again. The second girl who walked in seemed preoccupied, her attention glued to her phone. She didn't make eye contact with anyone. Her gaze flickered over Rayan for a fleeting second, followed by a dismissive shrug, and then she turned and left the cafe as quickly as she had entered. Rayan blinked rapidly, fighting back the tears that threatened to well up in his eyes. He whispered to himself, a confirmation of his deepest fears. "I knew it. No one will talk to me." From his table across the room, Armin watched, his heart breaking with each passing moment. He yearned to rush to his son, to wrap him in a hug and tell him it was okay. But he held himself back, clinging to the hope that his plan might still work, that someone would see the wonderful person his son was. Then, at 5:07 p.m., the door opened one more time. A girl entered quietly. This was Isla. She wore simple clothes, a soft, cream-colored scarf draped around her neck, and a gentle, unassuming smile graced her lips. There was no rush in her movements, no posturing for attention. She walked with calm, measured steps, radiating a sense of peace that seemed to soften the very air around her. Her eyes moved thoughtfully around the cafe, and then they stopped. Rian. Rian, bracing for another rejection, immediately lowered his head, his gaze falling to the table. But Isla didn't laugh or walk away. Instead, she walked straight toward him. When she reached his table, she didn't force a loud greeting or a handshake. She simply leaned in slightly and said in a warm, friendly voice, "Hi. Can I sit with you? You look like someone who enjoys quiet places." Slowly, almost hesitantly, Rayan looked up, surprised by the kindness in her tone. Her voice was gentle, not sharp or judgmental. Her smile was real, not a performance. He could only manage a soft nod. "Yes, you can sit." Alla took the chair opposite him, placing her small bag on the floor beside her. "My name is Alla," she said, her voice still warm and inviting. "You must be Rayhan." He nodded again, feeling his throat tighten with nerves. He didn't know what to say next, so his hands began to nervously play with the edge of the menu. Alla noticed his discomfort, but there was no judgment in her eyes. Instead, she offered him an escape. "If you're uncomfortable," she said softly, "we can talk slowly, or we can just talk about anything you like. There's no rush at all." Rayan blinked, taken aback by her patience and understanding. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. Calmly, without expectation, a small word escaped his lips, a whisper. "I like painting." Ayla's face instantly lit up with genuine interest. "Painting? Wow, that's beautiful. What do you like to paint?" For the first time that entire evening, Rayan lifted his eyes fully and met her gaze. As he looked at her, He felt something inside him soften, a tight knot of anxiety beginning to loosen. Someone was finally talking to him. Someone was finally listening. And far across the cafe, Armand watched the scene unfold, tears blurring his vision as they streamed down his face. He whispered to himself, a prayer of gratitude to the universe. Thank you, whoever you are. This story is a beautiful reminder that in a world that often moves too fast, the greatest connections are found in moments of quiet understanding and genuine kindness. It's about seeing past the surface and recognizing the heart of another person. The afternoon sun slowly dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, but inside the small cafe, time seemed to stand still for Rayan and Isla. They sat across from each other at a little table, lost in a quiet conversation. Isla spoke with a gentle slowness, a deliberate pace that gave Rayan the space he needed to gather his thoughts and find his words. She never rushed him, never tried to finish his sentences. Each time he paused, she simply waited, her patient smile a silent reassurance. For Rayan, this was a feeling he had never known. Profound sense of calm. Most of his attempts to connect with new people ended in frustration. They would ignore him, laugh at his stilted speech, or grow impatient and walk away. But Ayla was different. She truly listened. Her eyes met his without a hint of judgment, and she saw him not as someone different or broken, but simply as a boy. Do you paint often? Ayla asked, her voice soft and encouraging. Rayan gave a small nod. Yes, every day. I like skies and trees. Her interest was genuine. She leaned in a little closer, her eyes lighting up. Skies and trees. That sounds wonderful. Can you show me something you painted? With hands that trembled slightly, Rayan pulled out his phone. He navigated to his gallery and showed her his most cherished pesa, breathtaking landscape of mountains at sunset, awash in soft, dreamlike shades of orange and pink. Ayla's eyes widened in genuine awe. This is amazing. You see the world in such a special way? I've never seen colors like this in someone's mind before. A warmth spread through Rayan's chest, a feeling so new and powerful it almost took his breath away. No one had ever praised his art like that. The usual comments were strange or messy. He looked at her, his voice barely a whisper. You really? Like it? I love it, Ayla said with firm conviction. You have a gift. You don't need anyone to tell you otherwise. A blush crept up Rayan's neck. He wasn't used to compliments, especially ones that felt so real, so sincere. Their conversation continued, flowing like a gentle stream. Rayan found himself opening up, talking about his favorite colors, the quiet majesty of the mountains, and how certain sounds filled him with an overwhelming anxiety. Ayala listened intently, never interrupting. She simply absorbed his words, offering a nod, a smile, or a soft, thoughtful question that invited him to share more. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from across the cafe. A server had dropped a tray of dishes. The jarring noise shattered the calm. Most people barely flinched, but for Rayan it was an assault on his senses. His body tensed instantly. His hands flew to cover his ears, his eyes wide with fear. Ayla didn't miss a beat. She saw his distress immediately. Reaching across the table, she gently took his hand. Her touch was firm but soft. It's okay, she said, her voice like a warm blanket. She guided him away from the main area, leading him to a quieter, more secluded corner of the cafe. You're safe here. Rayan's racing heart began to slow. For the first time in his life, someone understood him without him needing to say a word. Someone knew how to help without scolding or judging. They stayed in that quiet corner, their conversation shifting to smaller, softer things: favorite foods, gentle music, and beloved books. Rayan felt a sense of comfort he had never experienced before, sharing thoughts he had kept locked away his entire life. He realized that Ayla wasn't just a stranger. She was someone who truly cared. From a distance, Rayan's father, Armand, watched them. A wave of relief and pure happiness washed over him. His son was smiling, his son was opening up, and most importantly, someone had finally taken the time to see past the surface and glimpse the beautiful heart within. As the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, Ayla turned to Rayan, her expression warm and sincere. I had a really nice time today. You're a wonderful person, Rayan. A strange, unfamiliar happiness bloomed inside him. For the first time, he didn't feel invisible. He felt seen, he felt valued, almost to himself. He whispered, I want to see you again? Ayla's smile deepened. I'd like that too. There, in that quiet cafe corner, a new connection was formed. It wasn't loud or fast or flashy. It was real. It was gentle, patient, and honest. For Rayan, it was the start of something he had dared not hope for: trust, hope, and the profound feeling of being understood. And for Ayla, it was a moment of quiet joy, the kind that comes from recognizing the purity in someone else's heart and realizing just how precious it is. Later, As Armand drove them home through the quiet evening streets, he glanced at his son in the rearview mirror. He saw the soft, lingering smile on Rayon's face and whispered to himself, maybe this is just the beginning. And deep inside, Rayon felt it too. A small, bright spark of hope, igniting the possibility that maybe, just maybe, for the first time in his life, the next few days passed in a quiet rhythm, but something inside Rayon had shifted. He still painted, still sat in his favorite garden spot, still avoided loud places. But now, a small, private smile often graced his lips. It was a smile that came from one name, Allah. His brother, Armand, noticed the subtle changes first. Rayon would hum softly while mixing his colors. He ate a little faster, as if anticipating something. He even checked his phone a few times throughout the day, a device he usually treated with indifference. Armand never asked any questions. He didn't want to push or make Rayon feel cornered. He simply watched with a warm, knowing heart, sensing that something genuinely good was happening in his brother's life. On the fourth day, after their first meeting, a message lit up Rayon's screen. It was from ALA. It read, "There's a small park near my college. It's quiet. Would you like to walk with me today?" Rayon's hands shook slightly as he read the words. His chest felt tight, but it wasn't the familiar tightness of fear. This was something new, something gentle, and full of hope. He took a slow breath and typed his reply, his fingers moving carefully over the screen. "Yes, I would like to come." At 4 in the afternoon, Armand dropped Rayon off near the park. Before he left, he asked, "Do you want me to wait for you?" Rayon looked at the park entrance, a new resolve in his eyes, and shook his head. "No, I'll be okay." A swell of pride filled Armand's chest as he nodded and watched his brother walk towards the gate. He drove away, a genuine smile on his face. The park was calm, bathed in the soft, golden light of the late afternoon. Tall trees stood like silent guardians, and a gentle breeze carried the fresh scent of cut grass. Rayon stood near the entrance, a nervous energy making him tap his fingers lightly against his leg as he waited. And then, he saw her. Ayla was walking toward him, her face lit with a friendly smile. She waved gently. "Hi, Rayon. I'm so happy you came." Rayon felt his heartbeat quicken, a little flutter in his chest. "Hi, I'm happy too." They started walking slowly along a winding path. Ayla naturally matched her pace to his, careful not to walk too fast or make him feel rushed. She had a way of noticing the small things, the way his eyes lingered on the colorful flowheads, how he instinctively avoided stepping on fallen leaves, the way he would take a slow, deliberate breath before speaking. "Trying to keep the conversation going?" Rayon asked softly. "Do you come here often?" "Sometimes," Allah replied, her voice as calm as the park itself. "It's one of my favorite places to clear my head. So peaceful." Rayon nodded in immediate agreement. "I like peaceful places too. No noise, no crowds. It feels safe." Ayla turned to him, her eyes soft with understanding. "I get that. Peace helps the mind breathe." Rayon offered a shy smile. "You understand a lot?" Ayla let out a soft laugh. "Maybe it's because I spend so much time with kids who feel things very deeply. They've taught me how to see the world a bit more gently." As they continued their walk, their quiet conversation was suddenly shattered. A small child, running happily with an ice cream cone, tripped and fell. The ice cream splattered on the pavement, and the child began to cry, loud and piercing. In seconds, the quiet atmosphere was gone. People started to gather around the crying child, their voices adding to the growing noise. Rayon's body froze. His breathing became shallow and fast. His hands flew to his ears, a reflex to block out the overwhelming sound that felt like a physical blow. ALA responded instantly. She didn't panic or draw attention to him. Instead, she gently touched his arm. "Come with me," she whispered softly, her voice cutting through his rising anxiety. She led him away from the commotion, toward a quiet bench tucked away under a large, shady tree. They sat down, and Rayon closed his eyes, focusing all his energy on calming the storm inside his head. Ayla waited silently beside him. She didn't ask questions, didn't tell him to calm down, didn't rush him. She simply gave him the space and time he needed. She understood that sometimes, the most helpful thing you can do for someone is to just be present. After a few minutes, the frantic pounding in his chest began to subside. Rayon finally opened his eyes, the world slowly coming back into focus. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice barely audible, his gaze fixed on the ground. "I get scared. Loud sounds hurt." Ayla shook her head gently, her expression kind. "Don't you ever say sorry for that. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. Everyone has moments like that. Yours just feel a bit stronger, that's all." Rayon looked up at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You don't? You don't think I'm strange?" Ayla's smile was warm and genuine. "No, Rayon, I don't think you're strange. I think you're unique, and unique is beautiful." Those words landed in Rayan's heart with a soft, comforting warmth. No one had ever called him beautiful before. He'd been called different his whole life, but never in a way that felt kind, never in a way that felt like a compliment. They sat in comfortable silence for a long moment, letting the peace of the park settle around them again. Then, Ayla spoke. "Can I tell you something?" Rayhan nodded. "You have a gentle soul," she said, looking directly at him. "The world needs more people like you." A blush crept up Rayhan's neck and into his cheeks, but this time, he didn't try to hide it. He felt a new lightness inside him, as if a small, warm spark had just been lit in a dark room. He looked at Ayla, at her kind eyes and her patient smile, and he felt a sense of safety he hadn't known was possible. In a soft, earnest whisper, he said, "I like being with you." Ayla's smile widened, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "I like being with you too, Rayhan." And in that quiet corner of the park, something beautiful and new had just begun to grow. After Lily left the mansion, Armand sat quietly in his room, his hands trembling slightly. It was a familiar feeling, one that came whenever his mind felt too full, too loud. The chair beside him was empty now, the same chair where Lily had sat just moments ago. He could still hear her soft voice echoing in his thoughts, a gentle sound that always felt like warm light, calming the storm inside him. But now, she was gone. He couldn't understand why. He replayed their time together, searching for a mistake, for something he did wrong, but found nothing. All he knew was that her absence left a raw, unfamiliar ache in his chest. Slowly, Armand pushed himself up from the chair and walked to the grand window overlooking the driveway. He had watched her leave. He had seen her get into her uncle's car, her movements hesitant. He had seen her look back at the house just once, only once. And that single glance, filled with an emotion he couldn't name, was now etched into his memory, a silent question that haunted him. After what felt like an eternity, he mustered a sliver of courage. He walked downstairs, his fingers clutching the small paper flower Lily had made for him. His steps were heavy, each one a struggle, but he forced himself to move forward. His father, Mr. Carter, was standing in the living room, pretending to be engrossed in his phone. But the moment his eyes met Armand's, a flicker of guilt crossed his face, gone as quickly as it appeared. Armand didn't take a seat. He stood before his father, a fragile yet determined figure. "Where's Lily?" he asked, his voice soft but clear. Mr. Carter put his phone down, his expression hardening into one of careful composure. "Armand, she went back home." "Why?" Armand held the paper flower tighter, its delicate petals a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside him. Mr. Carter let out a long, slow breath. "Because I asked her to leave." The words hit Armand like a physical blow. He felt something inside him crack, a sharp, splintering sound only he could hear. "Why?" he repeated, his voice smaller this time, almost fragile. His father gestured towards the sofa. "Sit down, son." Armand didn't move an inch. He remained standing, a silent sentinel demanding an answer. Mr. Carter sighed, realizing his son wouldn't be swayed. "Armand, I need to tell you the truth." Armand waited, his eyes fixed on his father, his entire being focused on the words that would follow. "I knew about Lily long before your blind date," Mr. Carter began, his voice low. Armand blinked, confusion clouding his features. He didn't understand. "I ran a background check on her," his father continued. "Her family, her job, everything. I chose her specifically because I thought she needed the money. I thought someone in her position wouldn't just walk away from you." Armand froze, the words sinking in like poison. You chose her because she was poor," he whispered, disbelief lacing every syllable. Mr. Carter closed his eyes for a brief moment, a pained expression on his face. "I was desperate. Armand, every girl we introduced you to left. They couldn't understand you. They didn't understand your silence, the way you speak, the way your mind works. I was terrified you would spend your whole life alone." Armand's gaze dropped to the paper flower in his hand. His father's words felt like a betrayal, not just to him, but to Lily. "But Lily didn't leave," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "She talked to me first. She listened." "I know," Mr. Carter conceded. "But I didn't trust her at first. In my mind, she was only being nice to you because of our wealth, because of what you could provide for her." Armand's breathing became shallow, uneven. He hated this. He hated how people, especially his own father, misjudged Lily's genuine kindness. "Did Lily do something wrong?" Armand asked, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and anger. "No," Mr. Carter admitted, the single word heavy with regret. "She was kind, patient, incredibly gentle. You were calmer with her than I have ever seen you in your entire life." Armand's lips began to tremble, the dam of his composure starting to break. "Then why?" he choked out. "Why did you send her away?" Mr. Carter swallowed hard, his gaze shifting away from his son's piercing stare. "There's one more thing, and it's worse." Armand slowly lifted his head, his heart pounding in his chest, bracing for the final blow. I didn't just ask her to leave, Mr. Carter confessed, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I warned her. I told her that if she stayed close to you, she could lose her job, and I made it clear that her uncle's business could suffer because of it. The world around Armand went silent. His fingers went numb, and the small paper flower, his last tangible piece of lily, slipped from his grasp and fluttered silently to the floor. You threatened her? He whispered, the air catching in his throat. Mr. Carter finally looked at his son, his own eyes filled with a deep, agonizing pain. I thought I was protecting you. I thought, sooner or later, she would break your heart, and I couldn't bear to see that happen. Armand shook his head, the first tear finally escaping and tracing a silent path down his cheek. She made the noise quiet, he whispered, the words raw and broken. She made things easy. She understood me. I know, Mr. Carter said, his voice thick with emotion. And I ruined it. I see that now. Armand took a step back, creating a chasm between them. You don't get to decide who understands me, he said, his voice cracking but gaining strength. You don't get to take her away from me. And for the first time in his life, Armand turned his back on his father. He walked out of the room, out of the house, leaving Mr. Carter standing alone in the suffocating silence. The fallen paper flower, a symbol of the beautiful thing he had just destroyed. Armand walked out of the living room, his steps fast and uneven. His father's confession still echoed in his mind, a sharp, ringing sound that wouldn't fade. The air in the grand mansion felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were closing in, pressing down on him. He needed to breathe. He needed space. But more than anything, he needed Lily. He pushed open the heavy oak doors and stepped into the cold night air. The mansion lights cast a warm, golden glow behind him, a stark contrast to the darkness in his heart. Armand didn't look back. He walked down the manicured garden path, his mind clinging to the memory of Lily's calm voice. A lifeline in the storm raging inside him. He whispered the words to himself, trying to make them real. Lily didn't leave because of me. She left because she had to. The thought was a painful splinter, but it also gave him a sliver of strength, a reason to push forward. He pulled out his phone, his hands shaking so much he could barely unlock it. He typed Lily's name, each letter a deliberate, hopeful act. He didn't know if she would answer. He didn't know if she even wanted to hear from him again after everything that had happened. But he had to try. He could not try. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, he pressed the call button. The phone rang once, the sound piercing the quiet night. Twice, 3 times. Each ring echoed the frantic beat of his own heart. He was about to give up, to let the despair swallow him whole, when the ringing stopped. Hello. Lily's soft voice filled his ears, a gentle melody that instantly soothed the sharp edges of his anxiety. Armand closed his eyes, a wave of relief so powerful it almost brought him to his knees. Lily, he whispered, his voice breaking on her name. I want to see you. There was a moment of silence on the other end, a silence filled with 1,000 unasked questions. Then her voice came again, gentle and laced with concern. Armand, are you okay? No, he said, the single word carrying the weight of his entire world. The honesty was liberating. I'm not okay. Another pause. He could almost hear her thinking, weighing her options. Then, quietly, she asked, Where are you? I'm outside the house, he replied, his voice barely a murmur. Can you come? He could hear the nervousness in her voice when she spoke next. Your father, please, Armand interrupted, the word a desperate plea. Just come. His voice was soft, but the raw emotion behind it was undeniable. Lily didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. Her next words were all the confirmation he needed. Stay where you are. I'm coming. As the call ended, Armand felt a knot inside his chest begin to loosen. He sank onto a cold garden bench, the silence of the night wrapping around him as he waited. The minutes stretched on, feeling like hours. A gentle wind rustled through the trees, their leaves whispering secrets to the moonlit sky. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small, crumpled paper flower Lily had made for him, the one he'd instinctively grabbed before leaving the house. He held it in his palm, a fragile symbol of hope. Then, he heard it, the soft crunch of footsteps on the gravel path. He looked up, and there she was. Lily. She was breathing fast, as if she had run the entire way. The moment Armand's eyes met hers, he was on his feet. He didn't try to hide the tears that welled in his eyes, tracking paths down his cheeks. Lily, he whispered her name again, this time filled with a profound sense of relief. She took a hesitant step closer, her own eyes filling with the storm of emotions. Armand, I shouldn't have come, but when you said you weren't okay, before she could finish, Armand found his voice. My father lied, he said quietly, the words hanging in the air between them. He scared you. He made you leave. Lily's gaze dropped to the ground, a blush of embarrassment and guilt coloring her features. I didn't want to go, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. I never wanted to leave you. Armand took a small, shaky breath, daring to ask the question that haunted his every waking moment. Do you still care? Her eyes lifted to meet his, and in their soft, shining depths, he found his answer. Armand, I never stopped. For the very first time, it was Armand who closed the distance between them. He stepped closer, his own voice now gentle, trembling with a vulnerability he'd never shown anyone before. You make the noise quiet. Lily's lips parted, her heart melting at those simple, devastatingly honest words. She had always sensed the turmoil beneath his calm exterior, the silent noise he lived with every day. And you, she whispered back, her voice thick with emotion, you make me feel understood. Slowly, carefully, Armand reached for her, his movements tentative as he watched for any sign of hesitation. When she didn't pull away, his fingers finally brushed against hers. Her hand was small and soft, and in his, it felt like an anchor. It felt warm. It felt safe. Lily squeezed his hand lightly, a silent promise. I'm here, she said, her voice firm with conviction, no matter what anyone says. Looking deep into her eyes, Armand whispered the words he had never said to anyone, the words that came from the deepest, most guarded part of his heart. Don't leave again. Lily stepped closer still, until there was barely any space left between them. She looked up at him, her gaze unwavering. I won't. If you want me to stay? Armand nodded. A single, definite movement. I want that. The garden wind blew softly around them, carrying the sweet scent of night-blooming jasmine. And for the first time in a very long time, Armand wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid of the world, of his father, or of the future. 'Cause standing here, holding Lily's hand, he wasn't alone anymore. The garden was quiet now, only the soft breeze rustling the leaves. Armand held Lily's hand gently, still feeling the warmth of her touch. Last night's fear, the confusion, and the heavy silence, all of it, felt like it had finally lifted. Lily looked up at him, her eyes soft and calm, a question held within them. Armand, are you really okay now? He nodded slowly, a small smile spreading across his face, a smile that seemed to come from a place of deep relief. Yes, because you're here. You stayed. You didn't leave again. Lily squeezed his hand lightly, her touch a firm and reassuring anchor. I promised I wouldn't. Not when it matters most. Armand took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the cool morning air. He felt a sense of calm he had never known before, a peace that settled deep in his bones. He had spent so long feeling misunderstood, tangled in a constant state of anxiety, and utterly alone. But now, with Lily by his side, the overwhelming noise of the world felt easier to bear. It felt quiet, safe. I was scared, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper, revealing a vulnerability he had hidden for so long. Scared that people would leave me, or that I couldn't be understood. But you made everything feel simple. You made me feel normal. You made me feel like I matter. Lily's smile was warm, radiant, and full of an understanding that went beyond words. That's because you do matter. Armand, I see the real youth, the one everyone else, Mrs. For a long moment, they just stood there, holding hands, letting the serene garden around them fade into a soft, beautiful blur. Armand realized something profound in that silence. The constant noise of the world, the judgments, the expectations, it no longer frightened him. He wasn't just calm because of the quiet environment. He was calm because of her. She was his quiet place, his sanctuary. Finally, Armand turned to her, his voice filled with a newfound certainty. Lily, I don't want to be without you, ever. Tears of happiness welled in Lily's eyes, shimmering like morning dew. And you won't be, she replied, her voice steady and sure. I'll be here, always. A small laugh escaped Armand's lips, the sound of pure relief and unadulterated joy. It was a sound Lily had longed to hear. Then let's start over, he proposed, his gaze hopeful. Slowly. Together. Lily nodded, her heart full. Together. As they stood there, hand in hand, the sun began its gentle ascent, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and pink. The warm, golden light touched their faces, and for the first time, in what felt like a lifetime, Armand felt truly free. Free to be himself, without pretense or fear. Free to love, without reservation. And free to trust, completely and wholeheartedly. Together, they walked back toward the grand mansion, not as two separate individuals navigating a difficult world, but as a united force, ready to face whatever came next. They knew there would be challenges, that life was never a simple path. But the crucial difference was, they had each other. This wasn't just a simple happy ending to a troubled chapter. No, this was something far more precious. It was a new beginning, beginning filled with hope, founded on love, and built upon a rare and beautiful understanding. And for Armand, that made all the difference in the world. Their journey back inside was a quiet one, but it was a comfortable silence. A stark contrast to the tense, suffocating quiet that had once filled the halls of the mansion. The grand foyer, which had once felt intimidating and cold, now seemed welcoming. The morning light streamed through the large windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny, golden sprites. It was as if the house itself was breathing a sigh of relief alongside them. They found themselves in the kitchen, the heart of the home. Without a word, Lily started making coffee, the familiar, comforting aroma soon filling the space. Armand watched her, a sense of profound gratitude washing over him. It was in these small, mundane moments that he found the greatest joy. The simple act of sharing a morning coffee, the quiet companionship it, was more meaningful than any grand gesture. He leaned against the counter, a comfortable ease settling into his posture. "You know," he began, his voice relaxed, "I used to hate mornings. They just felt like the start of another day I had to survive." Lily handed him a mug, her fingers brushing against his. "And now?" she asked softly. Armand took a sip, the warmth spreading through him. He looked at her, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Now, they feel like a gift, like an opportunity." That day, they didn't talk about the past. They didn't rehash the pain or the misunderstandings. Instead, they focused on the present. They took a walk through the estate's sprawling grounds, rediscovering familiar paths with new eyes. Armand pointed out his favorite tree, a magnificent old oak he used to climb as a boy to escape the world. Lily listened, imagining a younger, more solitary Armand seeking refuge in its branches. Later, they sat in the library, a room filled with the scent of old books and leather. Armand had always seen it as a place of lonely study, a room that echoed his own isolation. But with Lily there, sitting across from him, reading a book of her own, the library transformed. It became a shared space of quiet contentment. Every so often, he would look up from his page and just watch her, a gentle smile playing on his lips. He was memorizing this feeling, this sense of peace, so he would never forget it. As the day drew to a close, they found themselves on a balcony overlooking the valley. The sky was a canvas of deep purples and fiery oranges as the sun dipped below the horizon. The world was hushed, preparing for the night. Armand wrapped an arm around Lily's shoulders, pulling her close. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Lily leaned her head against his shoulder. "For what?" "For not giving up on me," he answered simply. "For seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself." Lily turned her head to look at him, her expression serious but incredibly tender. "Armand, I never saw someone who needed saving. I saw someone who deserved to be loved for exactly who they are. The thoughtful, the anxious, the brilliant, the quiet you, all of it." His heart swelled at her words. For so long, he believed he was broken, a collection of flaws that needed to be fixed or hidden. But Lily didn't see flaws. She saw facets of a whole person. In her eyes, he wasn't a project, he was a person worthy of love. In that moment, standing under the twilight sky, Armand understood that true love wasn't about changing someone. It was about creating a safe space where they could finally, fearlessly, be themselves. This was their new reality. It wasn't a fairy tale, and they knew challenges would lie ahead. The world outside the garden gates hadn't changed, but they had. They had found in each other a strength they didn't possess alone. Their love story wasn't about a dramatic rescue. It was about the quiet, steady power of acceptance and understanding. It was a story of two souls finding their way back, not just to each other, but to themselves. Hand in hand, they faced the coming night, no longer afraid of the dark, because they had found their light in each other. Their new beginning was here, and it was more beautiful than either of them could have ever imagined. Thanks for watching. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content that explores the power of connection and healing. See you next time.